I want to welcome you back to another episode of what I've branded Pivotal, since these interview style segments tackle impactful CPG industry topics and lessons from the business leaders that live it every day. So, if we were kind of putting together a 21st century beverage industry version of Mount Rushmore, my recent guest would have to be up for major consideration. From successful exits at ZICO, Coconut Water, Core, and Body Armor to his current involvement with ZOA Energy, Chamberlain Coffee, and Athletic Brewing, Danny Stepper is that dude. We had an absolute gem of a conversation where we touched on everything from the foundational importance of starting his career at Coca Cola to how he unsuccessfully dodged Hollywood, yet that entertainment industry experience has proven extremely fruitful at LA Libations as the intersections of beverage and entertainment multiply. These are just a snippet of the topics that we chatted about in this episode. But without further delay, here is my recent conversation with the co founder and CEO of the Beverage Incubator, LA Libations, Danny Stepper. So, super excited to get into this conversation because I've been watching Danny's career from afar for many years. Not like in this like creepy watching from outside the office kind of thing, but I think most of you know by now, like I'm a CPG nerd and one that appreciates and really respects how difficult it is to find gold within the CPG industry. But when someone's able to do it repeatedly, it's kind of mind blowing. So we'll get into all that, plus how Danny's a little bit of a renaissance man. But beyond all of that, what was even kind of more mind blowing for me was that unbeknownst, Danny was, I guess, a little bit of a fan of my work from afar, reached out to me and wanted to meet at the last NACS show. And I think through that, like, 30 or so minute conversation, we kind of like went all over the place. I said, the next time that we do kind of have a conversation, I wanted to make sure that we recorded it because I think there was a ton of like insightful information nuggets, just, stories and things that are going to come out that I think people would really appreciate. But, overall, thank you, Danny, for taking time out of your day and chatting with me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Me too, man. Thanks for caring enough to have me and look forward to getting into it.
So let's start like, I guess call that, if it's Drake or whatever, started from the bottom. And I think this is kind of an important point within, the beverage industry or just CPG as a whole and thinking about, starting and doing a lot of the different jobs. And I know something that I always end up doing, and maybe it's good advice, bad advice, but it's the advice I always give people is first time CPG kind of founders or people that are looking to get into the space and kind of dabbling around it. And I always say, like, if you haven't been in the space at all, you should probably get a job, and you should get a job with people that are doing is it field sales or any of that. You need to understand CPG from like the ground level. Is that kind of how you thought of it, or was it really a thought at the beginning, but you hindsight look at it and go, yeah, that was foundational. I needed to have that experience.
Yeah, it was foundational. I needed that experience, but it was not strategic by any stretch at all. When I got out of college, I had a bunch of college debt and no money, and I had to go figure out a way to build a life. And so my plan was to find the biggest company that I could find and work my way up. And crazy story how I actually got an interview with Coca-Cola Enterprises, which was the bottler at the time, the Coke bottler here in Los Angeles, which is now Ray's. And I got an interview and they hired me, and it was, as it turns out, the very, very, very bottom. I wore a uniform. I drove a truck that said Dr. Pepper on the side, and I met, the big Coke truck at the back of the store at 4 in the morning. They put me in Pacoima because my first boss, who now is, works with us, he's a partner of ours, Robert Macias. He was running the Silmar branch, and he thought I was Mexican, even though I'm Italian, because I speak a little Spanish. And so he said, "You're going to go to Pacoima." And, Pacoima is this little, Hispanic speaking pocket of Los Angeles, not the safest place at 4 in the morning. I saw a lot of things that I can't unsee in that job, but that was my entree into the beverage world. I met the truck at the back of the store. They would drop it off, And my job was to fill the shelves and spin the cans and rotate, make sure stuff didn't go out of code. I wasn't a salesman. I was below the salesman. So my job wasn't really to sell. It was more to just put the product where it could be in front of consumers at the best spot where basically my salesman told me to put it. And that's true of my two business partners too. We all started the same way. And so I do think it's very foundational because at the end of the day, everything that we do still happens right there at that point of purchase in the store, and how you show up in the store, and looking for, incremental locations and points of disruption in the store, and, trying to get in that consumer's grocery cart is really the goal. And so, you know, we've come miles from there, obviously, but still pretty much everything we do still revolves around that first role. So yeah, it was transformational. I was at Coke for 9 years. I got promoted 14 times in 9 years, and they put me through graduate school at Pepperdine, which was their biggest mistake. I had migrated to the Coca-Cola Company, and I was managing Coke's global business with Costco. So I had quite a ride to get from there to there. And they put me through graduate school, and it was the first time that I like took a breath. I mean, all
Mm.
I did was work, 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 work. And I was living in Seattle, which I didn't love. I'm a Southern Cal guy, and the rain was tough. And I just kind of took a step back, and I realized I'm an entrepreneur, and I didn't even know what that meant. Now it's
Mm.
real sexy. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
be an entrepreneur, and hustle and grind. For me, it was more just about I wanted to do things my way. When I took over the Costco business for Coke, we were the number one trademark in the world, and we were selling 12 cans with the dolphin killing ringers in brown boxes. And I'm like, we surely can do better than this, guys. And so I went on this journey to try to change, the biggest beverage company in the world to adapt to a better way to do things. And I was pretty rough on the furniture, to say the least, at Coke. There was no going away party for me, I like to say, which is ironic because you could talk to my therapist about my relationship with Coke. It's still ongoing. We just launched Costa Coffee for them. They supported me on 4 of the movies that I produced, and we've sold them a couple companies. And BODYARMOR just exited to them a year ago, which was an incredible day for everybody. So yeah, so it's a long road of how that worked, but I fell in love with beverage. I actually left the industry for 4 years after I got chased out of Coke, which we can get into if you want. But I was totally drawn back to the beverage industry, and I love it. It is a blood sport. It is completely grueling, completely hard. And, it all starts with a founder with a dream that thinks they have the best idea in the world. Usually it's not, especially when they get started. And I speak for myself. All the brands that we've created, we really thought they were great on the first iteration. And you look back and you're like, what were we thinking? God, this is terrible. But that's just part of the process of this journey. So there you go.
Yeah, I love it. There's a ton of like tidbits that you threw in there. And I think one of the things that at least resonated with me was when I started taking on, beverage clients and things. And I came from, more that caps, powders, pills, sports nutrition,
Yeah.
supplement world. And there's a good, bad, or ugly. There's a different way of, I guess, doing business in there because of, the formats or the sales channels or
Yeah.
whatever it was. But I came into, beverage contracts and had like all these different ideas, and probably similar to you, like a lot of people will push back and say, hey, this is what we've done for a while, and this is the way that it works. And there's always this, I guess, struggle where you're working against maybe legacy models that will probably outlive you and I, yet there still needs to be kind of like
Yeah.
disruptive, creative, entrepreneurial thoughts that somehow find a way to like break through in different ways. But I found a lot of times, I was probably not the most popular person in the room a lot of times because I was always trying to figure out like okay, I don't like the answer. This is how we've always done it. Like, how do we actually, do something that's a little bit different that maybe is going to create more value, even though that could be frustrating with people in the room that are willing to just say, hey, this has worked for so long. Let's just keep doing it.
It's a total conundrum, actually. It's really interesting that you say that. So, because we meet with over 300 founders a year, right? And so we try to see everything. That's our role. That's what the retailers ask us to do. And I hate it when someone tells me about a beverage that I haven't heard of. Like that's my job, is to tell, Mr. Walmart or whoever, about new stuff. That's what they expect of us. But as you meet with these founders, it is a fascinating conundrum, right? Because I feel like I'm not a young guy anymore, right? So I hear myself saying, well, this is the way that you have to do it, even though that's so not how I did it, right? I want to do everything different. So it is a fine line about, finding founders that are coachable, that will listen mainly about the mistakes that I've already made so that they don't do it, but without extinguishing that fire of you should do something different, right? Water in a can, seems
Yeah.
crazy, but it's working, So they're done, you can't just say, hey, that's never going to work, because you just don't know. I don't know what's going to work. Some of the stuff I'm still dazzled by, and some of the stuff that I think will absolutely work often doesn't. So it is a grueling, challenging, humbling game, but I love it.
Now, I want to kind of transition and understand. You mentioned that Coke had funded or partly funded some of your movie projects, and I wanted to understand, like, how did you transition, or what was that like passion or fire that got you into the entertainment or like media business?
So there is none. Most of us that grew up in LA don't really want to be in the movie business. It was never my dream or aspiration or ambition to be a movie producer. I didn't even know what that meant, quite frankly. It's I grew up playing Little League Baseball, going to church, very like kind of normal America stuff. But in LA, there's this pocket over here that you can't get away from, which is the movie industry. And all the biggest companies in LA happen to be, the studios and entertainment companies. So there's always that stuff that's there. And whenever you start having any sort of success, it's actually a small town, and you start meeting people and riffing. Well, while I was a Coke employee, a very prolific movie producer named Lawrence Bender, he produced all Quentin Tarantino's movies, Good Will Hunting, Pulp Fiction, Academy Awards coming out of his ears. He called me up and said, hey, I want to make this movie about soccer. And any way that I shoot it, there's got to be brands present. He's like that, and I want to use real teams and real players. And it was right after Any Given Sunday came out. If you
Okay.
remember, it was the Miami
Yep.
Sharks, and you're like, Miami Sharks, like why
Yeah.
didn't you just use the Miami Dolphins? Well, it turns out that's very complex to do, but that's what we did. And so while I was actually a Coke employee, I went to Paris with him and met with the president of FIFA, who endorsed this idea. We met with all the FIFA partners. There was 15 partners back then that were paying $250 million a year to be a FIFA partner. And we came home with a check for 45 million bucks from Adidas, the shoe company. And he said, so when are you leaving Coke? And I said, I don't want to leave Coke. What are you talking about? I'm not leaving Coke. Like, I got to go to a bottler meeting in Toledo next week. And he goes, no, 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 no. Let me explain to you what just happened. And I'm like, wow, I'm leaving Coke. So I called my boss, and a week later, I moved to London, and I grew my hair out like an idiot and became a movie producer. And I did that for 4 years. Like, I was in it, and you learn a lot about industries. And kind of what was confirmed for me when I was in that was these people live up to every cliche that you've ever heard about the entertainment business. And I didn't really miss Coke, but I actually missed the people at Coke. Real people, right? There's not a lot of real people in the entertainment business. There's a few that I'm still friends with, but and I choose to work with still, but for the most part, they live up to all the cliches that you've heard. And so I was drawn back to the beverage business. And so I got involved with two founders from Iceland, Christian and Jan, with a company called Icelandic Glacial. And Anheuser-Busch ended up taking a minority stake in that company. And I just said, I want to, I had just created, four movies, three of which were Disney movies, one of which was a Sony movie. And so I had this this entrepreneurial fire.
Hmm.
And Icelandic Glacial wasn't my dream, it was their dream. And I was happy to help them with it. But I said, I want to go do my dream. And I called up, well, I didn't call up because Dino and Pat had come and worked with me at Icelandic Glacial. And I said, let's go start our own thing. And we started LA Libations, which is now 14 years ago. It's amazing. And it's been a wild, crazy ride. It has gotten really fun lately, but just talk to our wives. We did all the things that, all entrepreneurs do, put our families in terrible positions, took crazy risk, kind of went all in, pushed everything in and went for it and just started building this business. And everyone, LinkedIn's so powerful, as you know, because everyone's following you on LinkedIn, and everyone's like, dude, Danny, like, I see what you're posting on LinkedIn. You're doing amazing stuff. And I always tell people, like, I only post the good stuff. Like, trust me, like, if you are in the day to day of what we have to go through and the fires that are happening nonstop, it's incredible. But I love it. It gets in your blood. So that's kind of how it does. I still kind of dabble in the entertainment business. We're going to make a big movie hopefully this year. Me and my friend Tucker Tooley. And the thing I do love about the entertainment business is kind of the same thing I love about the beverage business, is the idea that you can have an idea in your head and turn that into 130 pieces of paper that can turn into global intellectual property. That, even just talking about it right now, that like gets me going. I
Yeah.
love it. And the same is true with a beverage, right? You can come up with an idea, a better mousetrap, something that's completely new and never been seen before, or just a better, idea of a legacy brand that's got ingredient problems and you could tweak it like BODYARMOR did. So that to me gets me going. That's what gets me out of bed every morning, pretty early, by the way.
I think to your point with, and this is when I talked about watching your career from afar, I probably have seen, if we're talking the LA Libations kind of phase, the back half of it, which was probably the more win oriented, positive, or at least from what you're sharing or whatever, you're seeing those types of things. But playing it back also, like, it's probably easier to do it this way, but I kind of at least equated it to, it's a mashup of both, to you say, like the love of both beverage and entertainment. And though you might not be as in the deep end of the entertainment or the media business, I do think because of maybe even where the beverage industry or just CPG as a whole has went, like entertainment or just attention and all of that has become such an important element that you knowing some of those models and knowing how to pull those levers and where to go, it puts you in a good situation to be able to match up and kind of put those puzzle pieces together with LA Libations. And I know, like, probably some of the earlier brands and things are the ones that maybe didn't make it through, that you guys had through the incubator, maybe didn't have as big of an element of that. But I know a lot of the ones that you guys have worked with recently do have a big element that is, if it's kind of these celebrity packaged goods or these creator driven, or have some at least element of like grabbing attention and understanding how to productize that. Is that like, I mean, I feel like, though maybe you didn't think about it at the time, that entertainment piece like now plays such a bigger role in you being able to assess like who's going to win because of that element of like who can grab the attention and keep it.
So 100%, and it is newish in the LA Libations lifestyle, but now it's hard to imagine kind of doing it without that because it is such a shortcut. And I do feel like one of the reasons why all the talent is coming to us is, I personally understand how to talk to them, and it's different. Like it's a skill set that I didn't have when I was a middle manager at the Coca-Cola Company, right? But because I've created stuff and made stuff and worked with talent, and I know a little bit how they think. They're all a little bit different. And then, the fact that it is a small community. I mean, it's a tiny community. Like we launched ZOA with DJ with The Rock, and it's a small world. Jean-Michel Sarah, who directed my movie Goal 2, was his director
Hmm.
of choice. He directed Jungle Cruise and Black Adam. And so just to have those dots to connect and that familiarity, and hey, Jama says Danny's a good guy. Like, we were in the trenches together for years in Spain, and we made something. And so to make that connection with DJ early on was very important in kind of building that trust. And then, the fact that we have done deals with every major strategic, obviously the Coca-Cola Company, my partner, Molson Coors, who's we've got to definitely carve out some time and talk about the transformation that's going on over there. It's exciting. But we've done deals. I've done a couple deals with Bob Gangord at KDP. We've done a deal with Anheuser-Busch prior to our Molson Coors relationship. So the fact that we can connect those dots, and it's funny, like when I'm talking with Emma Chamberlain, she wants to talk, like, tell me, like, what are those guys thinking? What are they looking for? And to be that kind of bridge between that big corporate strategic and these creators is really important. And it's fascinating because they need each other. They really need each other. The big strategics, the days of launching a brand with a Super Bowl spot and blasting it everywhere are kind of over. I mean, consumers want to discover things. They don't want stuff shoved at them. And the power has really jumped to the creator, right? Yeah. Whether it's The Rock, or I saw your thing that you're wondering who Mr. Beast is going to work with, or Emma Chamberlain, or what have you. These people bring audience, and the retailers are now recognizing it big time. And so they're calling LA Libations and they're saying, hey, we want young women in our stores. Emma Chamberlain's a great way to bring that audience in. Let's party. Let's talk about it. And so it's just been a really interesting dynamic, and we didn't plan it this way, but we've kind of landed here, and it's fun. It's still hard. Nothing's easy. We launched ZOA, and there's been a lot of press this week about it, about how successful it is. But believe me, it should be 5x more successful than it is right now. We made every mistake that we could with that brand. Thank God we have The Rock and the power of his voice. The liquid has always been amazing, but we made mistakes. We launched 10 SKUs, 5 of which were 100 calorie. Terrible idea. And then going and unwinding that, putting it in the Molson Coors system as really their first lean-in brand for non-alc. There's a lot of growing pains on their side, which they've acknowledged, and they're getting better and tweaking and learning and fixing. And now we got really crazy momentum. But even with all that, it's still like really, really hard. Everything's hard. Everyone that thinks it's easy. And one of the problems that I have with the founders that want to work with LA Libations is they think we're a silver bullet and we're going to solve all their problems. So we try to be very upfront and say, hey, look, the odds are way against you, right? Only 2% of brands get to 10 million in revenue. That's a fact. Study the UPC codes for the last 10 years. That's an absolute fact. Now, our batting average is better than that, better than 2%, obviously, but we fail all the time. And obviously we don't talk about it as much as we do our successes. But when we're having those one-on-one conversations, it's very important. We tell people, like, look, we're going to tell you where the bodies are buried. You got to be coachable. But this is your brand, and ultimately it's going to be successful. We'll help. We'll put top spin. We have deep relationships, not contacts. There's a lot of wannabe LA Libations companies popping up that say they have relationships. They have contacts. They don't have relationships. And our relationships are really deep because we've spent 20 years on airplanes. Dino, Pat, myself, away from our families, going to godforsaken places like Bentonville, Arkansas. Just kidding. It's not that bad. It's actually
I was going to say, it's pretty nice there.
It's awesome. It's a lot nicer than it was when we first started going there. Cincinnati, I'm there all the time. Dallas with 7-Eleven. We're all over the place, but that's why we have the respect of, the Joe DePintos of 7-Eleven and, the John Furners of Walmart. Like, they trust us because we've been doing this for a long time, and we have a habit of, doing what we say we're going to do and being honest that, we think this is a good idea, but it might not work. And Having that humility has, I think, been a big part of the DNA of our company, that probably a lot of people that don't work real closely with us see. But people that do work closely with us, they say that all the time. What I hear, the feedback I hear is nobody works harder, nobody grinds like we do, and we are very eyes wide open about how hard and challenging this is to find a way to win.
What you just kind of mentioned there is super important because I think that you're talking about The Rock, these types of names that are the most powerful, distribution assets that are out there. And just having somebody like that doesn't necessarily create a win in the CPG industry because of how intricate and how difficult things are. And you can make a mistake that is somewhere up or down chain, and that creates a ripple effect that throws you off. And you kind of alluded to some of those things and why you're fixing some of those things and how that's going to help the growth. But I think a lot of people are falling into this trap of thinking just because I have a huge celebrity or a huge creator or anybody, that is automatically going to be a win. But that's not the case in CPG. And I'm sure there's other industries, but this is what we're talking about, where at the end of the day, there's so many different little steps and sub-steps that can totally wreck the ability for that beverage
Yes.
or that food to be successful. And for you guys to temper some of that. And also, I think it can't be kind of, overstated enough. I think the importance of being able to communicate to a lot of those, talent individuals, because I know for me, it's taken years. I've been in many meetings where I feel like I'm frustrated because I approach communication a certain way based on the way that I think as a strategist, and somebody that's probably thinks in game theory and logic and all this types of stuff. But that's not how they tend to be thinking about a lot of these things, where then you have to start to get into their shoes and understand, why are they being so passionate about things? Why do they care about certain elements so much? And a lot of times that gets missed. So you being able to talk the talk and be able to actually help that along, I think, is invaluable to the situation. And then that point about actually having these relationships and having at times some even like strategic partnerships and things, that's deep. That's something that you've built for a long period of time, decades at this point. And that has a ton of value when you're looking at, if it's go to market strategies for some of these brands, when you're working with them from an incubator standpoint or just an investment standpoint, or just your ability to, as a way, kind of move markets in a way that you would want it to be. I think all of that is invaluable and really separates, I think, your business from, like you said, copycats or fake artists or whatever you want to kind of call it. It's people that are trying to maybe take advantage of a little bit of value in the market and trying to project that as more than what it is, where you're actually building, through some growing business model, integrated business model. You have a ton of different kind of businesses that I think are all kind of connected in, that work well together, that make sense, that you own,
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily even partnerships. I think all that stuff plays into, what you're talking about. I think that is, maybe not one, if you put it in a vacuum, is the main element, but I think all these things together that you've accumulated over time has become something extremely valuable.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. And from the talent perspective, if people don't realize it, but if you work closely with these people and you kind of dig under that, there's a lot of insecurity with the talent, because their career is based on winning and being successful and not failing. And so when you throw yourself out there, right, you're open to failing, and that's generally not good because it's a big PR game for the talent. So, to have a partner like LA Libations, for them, they at least know what they're getting into, right? They know that it's hard. They know that we're highly connected at the C suites of all the retailers, all the strategics. So we do take a lot of risk out, but at the same time, it's very there's a lot of uncertainty in being a true entrepreneur, even for these big, huge stars. And so what we've done, to your point, is we've tried to vertically integrate our company so that we can control as much as we can humanly control. I mean, when we started the company, we weren't making brands, right? We were a broker, basically. And we put the word broke in broker. Believe me, we couldn't make any money. But over the years, we started building muscles, and we now, we built Relentless Trade Solutions, which is a merchandising company, because we needed it, and because founders that we partner with, that we're strategic with, need it. So we created it ourselves because we thought we could do it in a very compelling and big way. And we just invested in High Touch, which is now High Touch Libations, which is a distributor here in Southern California. It's because the market really needs it. We've got big hopes, dreams, ambitions for that business, and Chuck and Czar are amazing. We built our own marketing agency called LA Vibrations that's very focused on customer marketing. Like, we're not doing Super Bowl spots. We're blocking and tackling, point of sale, sampling, things like that early stage founders really need. We need it for our brands. So we've tried to just go every step of the way, and we got some more stuff coming that's going to, I think, surprise a lot of people that I'm really excited about. But we were going to continue to vertically integrate and keep doing this.
I want to bounce back a little bit because I know you wanted to talk through a little bit around like the Molson Coors thing. And I think for me, maybe people didn't even pick up on the name change that happened. I don't know if it was a couple years ago at this point, but they changed even the name of the company to Beverage Company and not was the beer company or whatever it was. It was, yeah. I think at that point, you realized there was changes happening. And there's a lot of, I think, interesting things happening across beverage, and if it's alcohol, non-alcohol, if it's the convergence of the two around holistic brand IP, or is it the even just the beer alcohol distributors traditionally trying to diversify their business and look at revenue streams differently because of some of the trends that are happening with alcohol consumption. There's just so much going on. But to your point around, having ZOA and having that be the first big push in that new direction, you're kind of the test dummy, in a lot of that, where it's a brand that could win big, but yet it had to go through growing pains, not only just as a brand, but as a partner with a distribution model that's completely different.
So many things to touch on here. So the day that Molson Coors announced their investment in LA Libations was the same day that they actually announced they're changing the name of the company from the Miller Coors Brewery to the Molson Coors Beverage Company. And they said, we're going to get into non-alc and other stuff beyond beer, and they're going to partner with LA Libations. Now, keep in mind, on the context of that, we had been coming off, there was a moment when the Coca-Cola Company owned 25% of LA Libations. And that relationship, because of a regime that's not this regime there, they invested in us, then a new regime came in. What often happens at big companies is you get some guy that comes in and says, oh, I don't even understand this relationship. I don't understand why you guys exist. I don't get the value that you create, and basically left us for dead by the side of the road. And we explored a lot. We had a lot of conversations with Anheuser-Busch, and they ended up saying, hey, let's just do one thing together. And we launched a brand called Oro with them. And then with Keurig Dr. Pepper, they said, hey, let's do one brand together. And we did Don't Quit. And, Monster was flirting with buying us for a little bit, but we'd have become employees at Monster. And I haven't had a boss in a long time. I don't think that would work. So, and then we met Molson, and it was so refreshing to meet a group. They're a relatively big company, not as big as everyone thinks they are, but they're a pretty big company. And in these big companies, what I've learned is there's just this incredible, like, unearned confidence and arrogance, and Molson didn't have any of that. They basically said, we know what we don't know, and we want a partner that can do this. And the timing was incredible for us. We were running on vapors, like fumes, and they came in and breathed life into our company. We will forever be grateful for what they did, and it's worked out for them very well. We brought the ZOA deal We brought the Topo Chico hard seltzer deal. Like we got our ex-wife and our new wife to come together on that one, Coke and Molson Coors, and they're just a great partner. Pete Marino, Gavin Hattersley, they are really taking intelligent, calculated risks about how to change that company, and you're starting to see some really great traction of some of the decisions that they made a couple years ago, us being one of them. But I still think it's all out in front of them. But one of the problems with launching a brand like ZOA, for example, is Jared Cremush has this phrase, make all your mistakes off Broadway. Well, when you have The Rock, you can't really do that. And we continually break our own rule. Let's start small in LA, and then our eyes get bigger, and we end up going huge quick. And then when you have a mistake, like launching 100 calorie, it's really hard to fix those things. And, Molson, it was learning. I mean, and now if you look at from where they were then to now, they are building this thing for speed. They are going to be a force in non-alc, and we're just happy to be a little part of that.
Yeah, I love to see that. I mean, I think it's one of the more interesting areas of beverage right now. It's just all that's going on with the evolution of both alc and non-alc, and just kind of where that can go. And there's some, archaic rules and laws and different things that we're probably going to have to be broken and fixed, and come to life again. But it
No,
is
it's
interesting.
so exciting because we somehow are sitting in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously the Topo Chico thing with Coke and Molson, but the fact that Molson's getting into non-alc, Coke's getting into alc, and Athletic Brewing we're very involved in, which is kind of changing the whole game. And we've been involved with Bill and the team very early on, and it's been really exciting to watch that. We have a brand called Ariba Chelada, which is a michelada that's like kind of a clamato killer. Hopefully, sorry KDP, but that's what we're trying to do, is disrupt that. But that there is just a huge mashup for alc and non-alc, and we are sitting kind of in it. But you're right, the complexity is incredible with the legalities by state, the route to market choices that have to be made. Pepsi's creating their own distribution. Good luck with that. It's going to be interesting, but it's all just really kind of getting mashed together right now.
Yeah. Just kind of jump to a question that's maybe not too closely related to this, but always something that I love to ask is, like, where do you find yourself, at least kind of from a passion point, or just a interest level recently, like within the beverage industry? Is there like a certain area that you just seem to be like keep gravitating to, or just one that you're kind of saying, hey, this is probably going to be really big soon, and I need to be, up to speed as quick as possible on some of this stuff?
So, look, when Adidas gave me $45 million to make some soccer movies, right? That was the first of its kind, right? A brand financing movies. Coke came in and did a bunch with those movies as well. And I just think that is something that I'm very passionate about. I had a joint venture with Relativity Media. LA Libations was actually in a movie studio for about 4 years. That's where our headquarters was, at Relativity Media. And the idea of integrating brands and content, and I know everyone's creator economy, creator this, creator that. It's not just, I don't think, creators, but I think it's content. So, I'm friends with David Glasser and Taylor Sheridan, the guys that created Yellowstone, and the sequel to Yellowstone is called Four Sixes, and they bought the ranch, and we launched a beer and ready to drink cocktails. I actually have it right here, a little commercial, but it's called Four Sixes, and we believe that's going to be like a household name. So to me, that gets me going, right? And it is like this weird world that I found myself in, because I've done the entertainment stuff, and I've obviously done beverage since the earliest days of my career. So that's fascinating. I also believe that consumers don't trust big companies like they did decades ago, but they do trust creators, right? So, and I think big companies are realizing that, right? And so they're trying to figure out how to work with creators so that they can, have that audience, brought to themselves. So as opposed to just launching a brand with a trademark that no one's heard of, when you do something else like Chamberlain Coffee, which is really fascinating with the momentum that we've got cooking with that thing, it's insane, So that's what kind of gets me going. There's a lot of work to do, but I also believe there's only a few that matter enough to move the needle in that space. Everyone's like, oh, we got to get YouTubers. There's like Mr. Beast up here, Emma Chamberlain right here, and then everyone else is like, I mean, when people like start learning about what's going on there, it's not like there's thousands of influencers making kabillions of dollars. There's not. It's kind of like the movie business. There's like A-list, and then there's like B-list and D-list, So, I want to work with the A-listers, and that's really what we're trying to do and what we're focused on, and we are. So that's what kind of gets my blood pumping, and then just building the company. We're 80 people now, which blows my mind. And when you're, I've constantly seen where the guy that creates the company isn't the guy that should run the company.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty as charged. So thank God I have really great business partners with Dino and Pat, and we're bringing some really incredible talent into the company, and we've developed some incredible talent, with Bonnie and Robert Macias and Kelsey. Like, we have really great people. So those are kind of the two areas that I'm, really kind of focused on for the next 5 years is building the company, growing up as a company, and then, being on the tip of the spear of this new content and brands getting mashed up.
Yeah, I think I agree on what's the next 5 years on that intersection of content and how that plays, not just from the creator side, but like you said, is it franchises or wherever. I made a piece of content. I don't remember when Stranger Things, that last season, came out, and I said, Netflix, some of their hires they were doing, some of the things how they're trying to productize their business, but also just some of those major kind of titles that they had. They were working in a way I thought was unique. They kind of made in real life the pizza that kind of resembled it, and it made and it did extremely well in Walmart. And it did, it was one of those things where people could then experience something that wasn't just on a screen. It was something that they could actually come and consume and wherever. And I think there's a ton of those like creative intersections that could happen. Now it takes somebody that actually has the vision to kind of make those things come to life. And to your point, not all of these different franchises are actually powerful enough to make something that is commercially, exciting for people. But
Yeah.
I do think, even if we move, downstream 5 years from now or whatever, and some of these more retail points become frictionless or whatever, like what's a win? Like maybe 20 million is actually what used to be a billion or whatever. Like the numbers become smaller because
Yeah.
it's easier to build those things, and maybe you can actually leverage smaller creators and those types of things. I don't know, that maybe moves it in a different way, but I do think like all of that stuff is going to keep weaving in and out of each other. It's just a matter of like, where can you find the points where they hit together to actually make a difference?
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think, it's interesting because it's kind of like a unicorn. Like, the big strategics are like, let's go small, right? And let's get really small. And then when VEB started at Coke, it was like, we're focused on really tiny brands. And they're like, that's too hard. Let's only do really, really big brands, And now, all of them are kind of thinking, well, maybe it's small again. And it kind of just depends on who the executive is at the time and
Yeah.
how good are they selling north. But I think you're right. I don't think 20 million is enough to get the strategics out of bed. I mean, that's the other misnomer in our world is everyone thinks that these exits are few and are happening all the time. They're not. They are so few and far between. They are so hard to get done, and we've been fortunate to be along for the ride on quite a few of them, but they just do not happen. I mean, and so the insecurity and the paranoia that I have is as great as it's ever been, because you're only as good as your last one, and I just know how hard they are to come by, and it's not going to be a $20 million brand, right? I don't see Coke or KDP or Pepsi, buying a $20 million brand, right? It just clogs up the system. It's too small. So it's gotta have some scale. The big question is, what is that number? And that number is danced around. At one point it was 10 million in revenue. It ain't that anymore. Then it was 75 million in revenue. And I mean, I think it's still much bigger. I think it's, triple digit millions for sure, just to become even minutely interesting to a strategic.
Yeah, I think to your point, when we're talking beverage specifically, I do think, because of the models in which that they're going to be put into, it has to make sense from a higher number. And that's why you do see those, big, impressive ones that come, because you got to have a couple, if it's 100 million, 150 million, whatever it is like, it has to make sense on that truck that has a certain,
But here's
square
the
inch that
real
they know it turns a amount of revenue. And it's like, why would you put that on there and kind of clog it up? You only have so much time in a day to do these things. And why do that when there's other opportunities out there where I think there's other, if it's food or other categories that maybe make more sense downstream a little bit more because of the distribution models. But to your
Yeah.
point, I think with beverage, like, it still needs to hit a certain level for the big people to make sense. Maybe they figure out a new operating model where then, they work with people like you, where they basically take and have you run the smaller brands, incubate them to a certain point, and then as they mature, they move upstream or whatever. Because in the business, bureaucratic model in terms of how it works and how slow, and everybody wants to kind of, add other elements to it. Like, it doesn't work with startups that need to be quick, nimble, fast, make decisions quick. It's like, it just doesn't make sense until it gets to a certain level.
But here's the other side of that. So, everyone's saying, no, winter's coming, the economy is terrible. It's not about just growing the top line now. You have to, be profitable. We're dealing with heavy liquid here. No one's profitable until they're at 50 million in revenue. And if they are profitable, they're tiny, right? But the strategics have also gotten smart. Like, they don't want to write an $8 billion check for a company that's losing money, right? So they're putting EBITDA components into these things, which is smart for them. But for the founder, it's like, how do you grow to be big enough to matter to them and still make money?
Yeah.
I mean, you better have an incredible margin structure, right? You probably need to give up a lot of the company along the way to people that can move the needle for you, without spending money on marketing. So it kind of gets back to the creator economy, right? If you can drive
Yeah.
traffic and not have this huge marketing spend, and to get to where you need to go, that definitely helps. But that is the conundrum. I mean, all these, people are saying, oh, your brands, all these private equity firms are like, come talk to me when you're profitable. Well, sorry, you're not going to ever do a deal with a small brand because they're not profitable. Just is what it is, and people will learn, and it'll swing back and forth. And we've seen it swing back and forth before. And right now, the more fascinating thing for me is the fact that, and I know all their deals, right? I know all the strategic deals, and they're like, you got to make money. Like, it's got to have some EBITDA. And now they're even like trying to negotiate exits as 50% a multiple of revenue and 50% a multiple of EBITDA. So it might be 2x revenue and 12x EBITDA. And as a founder, that sucks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not going to be a good exit, And I fortunately was raised by wolves, by guys like Mike Rapoli and Lance Collins, and even there, they can figure it out because they've been doing it long enough, and they know the playbook. But for a lot of these founders that have never done it, it's harder and harder than ever. And now capital's drying up. It's going to be a really interesting year for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and to bring this back to, like, I was saying, where I cut my teeth at, you're seeing, even that be a unique model, I think. And we're talking mostly probably like with these functional beverages, but like, they start as something that has a much better margin structure, like supplements or sports nutrition. You can build a substantial business pretty quickly, use that to basically be your bank. Then when you want to do a beverage, you already have brand recognition, you have some existing kind of model that can work. and then you're able to kind of fund that to get it up to scale and get it going. So you're seeing that like if it's C4 or even
Yeah.
to a smaller extent. I know like Celsius, but had its issues for a long time. But like the beginning, they used a more like nutraceutical angle to their approach. And there's other ones like if it's Ghost or if it's Rise or if it's Lonnie New or all these ones where like they started and they have substantial supplement businesses that are churning cash, and then you can use that to kind of fund your beverage play.
But also the focus. I mean, you're talking about a channel that you're incredibly knowledgeable about. But one of the things that like I was thinking as you're saying this, when we got involved with ZICO Coconut Water, when it was about 2 million in revenue, it was tiny. They were basically only selling to yoga studios.
Hmm.
But the reason why Coke invested in that early, different world, all that. But the reason why is they had so much traction in one specific audience that these people just loved it. They're passionate about it. And so you're right. Like if you can build out in a channel that you can extrapolate out or a strategic can extrapolate out and say, oh my gosh, this could be, incredible. So it's going to be fascinating to see where it all plays out. But what are the other channels like that, which is really interesting? I think food service is one that's really interesting. Like a brand that I'm obsessed with right now is a brand called Tractor. I don't know if that's on your
Yeah.
radar that KDP invested in. I've been involved with those guys for a long time, way before KDP, and nobody really knows what's going on there. I do. It's fascinating, like what to see where that one's going to go. But once again, they found their lane, and
Yeah.
then they just keep growing it out. So
I think the conversation met every expectation I had for insightful, fascinating, jumped all around, great stories. So I appreciate all the time that you shared with me, Danny. I think the audience is definitely going to love this episode.
listen, I hope so. It's been great getting to know you, and I appreciate the time that you care. And I'll leave you with the thing I always leave everyone with: don't quit.
I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting the like button to support me. Also, help me get to my short-term goal of 2,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that basically 3/4 of you that are watching this YouTube video right now are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.